Hello, everyone. Right. So, yeah, tonight I'm also going live in the Facebook group as well because the live streams originally on this channel were all Facebook live streams. It was just a place to archive our Facebook live streams originally. So I thought I'd go back to do that because I can link up StreamYard to broadcast to two places at once. And I can also do streams that are just to the Facebook group as well. So, yeah, join the Facebook group if you haven't already. And welcome to the new subscribers. So I'm getting new subscribers on YouTube. So I'm trying to broaden the reach of the channel a bit because we're just all talking in the same groups at the moment, aren't we? It would be good to get the information out to a wider audience. So I'm trying to expand the audience a bit. It seems to be working a bit. I'm gaining new subscribers anyway. Hi there. Yeah, I'd have to look at Facebook to see the names of the people in the Facebook chat. That's the problem with StreamYard and Facebook. And Paul's here as well. Hello, Paul. Record WCG Capone. Hello. Yeah, well, tonight I'm going to be talking about Gary Hinman, the murder of Gary Hinman, because the only murders I've talked about so far on this channel are the CIA Drive murders, obviously. And the Gary Hinman murder is a big catalyst to why all the other murders happened as well. And it's the one that's not spoken about so much. And it's the one that was committed by Bobby Beausoliel, who is obviously still in prison now. And he's an interesting character. I'm going to read out basically sort of what the official narrative of it is. And I'm also going to be reading some of the Manson File later. I'll probably read the bit I'm going to read in two parts because it's really long. I timed how long it would take me to read it earlier. So yeah, I'm going to read it in two parts, but I'll get to that. I've done a slideshow anyway to do because when I was looking through because I've got loads of stuff from CIA Drive. .com, which is if you're interested in the Charles Manson case, go to CIDrive.com because that's like a archive site of everything to do with this case. Everyone's parole hearings, trial transcripts, photographs, everything about this case. So yeah, that's and there's the links to everything that I will show or have used for tonight will be in the description. They're in the description of the stream now, and I'll share it all in my Facebook group later as well. And so, so I can show you some pictures later because there's photos on Cielo Drive that don't have any bodies in, so I'll show that later. And and like I say, this murder is often like quite overlooked, and they play down how well Gary Hinman really knew them and all this as well. There's a lot that's played down about this case, this whole case, like and the other murders, and this murder's one of the important ones in the case, basically. Right, so I've started this. I'm just going to read this out. This is just the text from cielodrive.com. Gary Allen Hinman was born in Colorado on the Christmas Eve of 1934. He graduated school with a degree in chemistry, but continued at UCLA, where he was near receiving his PhD in sociology. He was remembered as having a kind, gentle soul and for being an intellect. Gary's house in Topanga Canyon was a regular crash pad for anyone needing a place to stay. He befriended the Manson family, often letting various members live at his home. Hinman was a talented musician. He worked at a music shop, teaching the bagpipes, piano, trombone, and the drums. Sometime in 1968, he became interested in Nichiren Shoshu Buddhism. In the summer of 1969, Gary was planning a religious pilgrimage to Japan. And when I read through the police reports, I found that his father had given him the money for this trip to Japan, and he had already booked it as well. And there's more on the actual Cielo Drive website where I can read out basically the account of his murder. That's the one, right. And so this is the account of his murder, from the official sort of story on why he was murdered. On July 25th, 1969, Manson family members Bobby Beausoleil, Susan Atkins, and Mary Bruner paid Gary a visit. Manson was under the impression that Hinman had money in stocks and bonds and that Gary had owned his house and cars. He sent the group to Hinman's house to convince Gary to join the family, which included turning over his assets. According to Beausoleil, the group visited Hinman because Gary had sold him some bad mescaline and Bobby wanted his money back. Whatever the motive was, the conflict lasted 3 days, during which Charles Manson and Bruce Davis stopped by. As soon as he arrived, Manson raised a sword and quickly struck Hinman in the head, slicing Gary's left ear and face. Hinman asked Manson why they were doing this and requested him to take the others and leave. Manson and Davis immediately left in one of Hinman's cars, while the others stayed behind. Mary and Susan stitched up his ear with dental floss, while Gary, who didn't believe in violence, just kept on asking them to leave. It all ended on the 27th when Beausoleil finally killed Hinman, stabbing him in the chest twice. Bobby, Susan and Mary took turns holding a pillow over his face. Beausoleil then wrote "Political Piggy" and drew a paw print on the wall in Hinman's blood in an attempt to make authorities think the Black Panthers committed the murder. Gary died on the floor with his prayer beads in his hand, chanting "Nam Myo Ho Renge Kayo Nam Myo Ho Renge Kayo," the chant of his faith. And there's also the pictures that I can show you from Cielo Drive. If I scroll down, there should be. This is the 3 perpetrators: Bobby Beausoleil, Mary Brunner, and Susan Atkins. This is his kitchen. And they described that in the police report, how the table's broken. And this is Charles Manson and Bruce Davis, who turned up, and Charles Manson cut Gary Hinman's ear. And this is the sword that Charles Manson cut his ear with, apparently at his face. And this is the front end of his Fiat car. Sorry, let's grab a couple of this and see it. And that's the back end of it. And that's the knife used to stab him in the chest, finally. And this is a dummy showing his injuries. You can see the wound on his face here. And the wounds on his chest there, that's the fatal wounds. And this is his actual blood. That's where it said "Political Piggy" on the wall, and they did a paw print, trying to make it look like the Black Panthers had done it, apparently. And yeah, you can see the pillow and his blood here. It's just more of his house, but they're showing more. Yeah, there's more blood there, or just the blood from a different angle, I think. And this is spots of blood. You can see the rings. I think that's spots of blood. And this is his bus. VW microbus. The side of it. And that's the inside of it. Look, there's a bed in it. The rear of it there. I've often wondered that as well. He apparently, well, as what I'm going to read out from the Manson File tells you this, but he had loads of Black Panther literature around his house. I've often wondered that if they met each other, because she was connected to the civil rights campaigns as well. But we've never found anything that positively links Abigail Folger to him. No. Well, I wondered that. Yes, he did. This is like I say, what I'm going to read later. Tells you all about that as well. It is sad, yeah, because and Bobby Beausoleil still talks about him and calls him his friend. And he was involved with the family quite a lot. Hello, Charlie. Hello, Beckham. Yeah, there was other weird things though that I noticed. Well, this next slide that I did here. This is just from his autopsy report. Oh no, it's going to do the screen like that. That's better. This just describes how he was found. He was found by these the Buddhist group that he was involved with. I just thought this sounded quite sad. Right. So just got to find it in the autopsy report. Yeah. Decedent was last known to be alive on Thursday, 7/24/69, when he went to work. Friday, 7/25/69. He failed to show up at work. Crew Music Company in West LA. Decedent was known user of LSD, mescaline, and peyote, which they misspelled. He joined a society to help kick the drug habit, Nichiren Shoshu of America. Decedent, having missed several meetings, aroused the fear among some of the members and president that something was wrong with the decedent. Friends of his came over to the house prior to 8:25 p.m., smelled the odour and found the decedent and called the sheriff. Upon inspection at coroner's office, the decedent was found to have a possible lacerated face and ear, also numerous wounds to the chest. There was no light in the room where the decedent was, and it was difficult to check thoroughly. The decedent was lying in a supine position, covered with a blanket on arrival of the sheriff unit on the floor. And just another thing, a weird thing that I noticed in his autopsy report that's not mentioned anywhere else is there were more wounds to his head. There's wounds to the back of his head as well that appear to be sort of knife wounds or something. And no one's ever mentioned this. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about that briefly as well. Because it describes the wounds as well in his autopsy report. Right, summary of the wounds. Stab wound 1 on the left of the scalp of the vertex, approximately half an inch, approximately 1.5 inch in length. This is superficial and does not penetrate the scalp. This is not considered to be fatal. So this is the first wound, which is on the left of the scalp, so at the top of his head. And stab wound 2, and this is the one that's what Charlie did, the wound to the side of his face. Stab wound, laceration, cutting wound, the left side of the face, extending from ear to halfway between the left angle of the jaw and the lateral margin of the left lip. It's 5 inches in length, partially transects the ear, exposes the deep structure of the muscle, appears to go inward in a downward backwards direction, but depth is maximum approximately 1 inch. There is no obvious interruption to the oropharyngeal cavity. This wound is possibly fatal. And I looked up what that word means. So it just means basically the inside of your mouth. So it didn't go all the way through his face, basically the same. And then there's this other one, which is the one that's never been mentioned anywhere else. 3.5 inches from the vertex, 5/8 of an inch in length, angling somewhat backwards, just behind the upper portion of the right ear. Does not enter into the skull. This is superficial and is not considered fatal. Right, so yeah, these two is wound 1 and wound 3 are these other wounds to the back of his head, and no one ever has talked about how he got cut in the back of the head. But stab wound 4 enters, these are the ones to his chest, enters the anterior chest wall at approximately the midline with a slight angle from right to left in a downward direction with rather sharp edges, with the apparent thrust of the weapon in an upward direction up into the chest cage. The uppermost portion of the external opening is 18.75 inches from the anterior aspect of the lower, and then the page is blur. It's been badly photocopied. Then it goes on to stab wound 5, which is yet another stab wound to his chest. But yeah, the two I wanted to mention just were those strange ones that don't get talked about. Yeah, going back to that, yeah, I think Hinman and Folger were part of two very different groups. Folger's was a lot more showy and light, and Hinman's was a bit more underground. Yeah, possibly, and because she was more involved with funding things as well, wasn't she? She gave money and would have been like a hostess at things and all that sort of thing, wouldn't she? That's it. Yeah, they might have met at some sort of meetings there or attended the same rally or something at some point, you know. But also, they all sold drugs as well, didn't they? Because Gary Hinman was a drug dealer as well, and Folger was always involved with it, whether she was herself or not. She was involved with Sebring, wasn't she? Did he get pistol whipped? I don't know. Yeah, because these wounds on his head, I've never heard anyone talking about how he got wounds to the back of his head. Basically, they're up on his scalp. So it's not just a wound to his face. There's other wounds to his head. I've not heard that. Yeah. By when would that have been? Would that have been when Bruce Davis and Charlie were there? Because I don't remember who bought a gun. Who would have had a gun to pistol whip him? Wait till I get to what I read out from the Manson File. There's a lot of interesting stuff about him to do with the FBI and the police. The main Buddhist temple in Rancho Cucamonga was bugged by the FBI. There was a copy of a zine called The Maoist. The Maoist, you mean? In his mailbox when he died. I suspect the FBI had a file on Gary. Bobby had a gun with him, did he? So yeah, it might be that, yeah, because they were fighting at one point, weren't they? Because that is supposed to be when Mary Bruner. Yes, I've still. No, I forgot about that bit. Yeah, because the fight is supposed to have escalated, and they're supposed to have been waving the gun around, and Mary freaked out and phoned Charlie, and that's why Charlie and Bruce Davis came over, isn't it? Yeah, so there was a gun. And they talk about a bullet in the police report. Actually, they're both up on Cielo Drive. The police reports, but they say there's a bullet in the kitchen that's gone into a cabinet, but it doesn't look recent, so they don't think that it was to do with his murder, basically. But yeah, maybe during that fight, when Mary Bruner's rang Charlie, Bobby did whack him in the back of the head with the gun. What was the next thing that will be now? Then I'll be getting on to doing the reading from the Manson File. So let's just talk about generally what I've already talked about for a minute. Give me a rest before I have to start reading. Yes, I've heard this as well, and that because in that the documentary that they now call the Rob Zombie documentary, there's a phone interview with Bobby, and he says that he was they had calmed the situation down, and Charles Manson made it all worse again by coming in and slashing him like that. That he'd actually got the situation resolved and got him to sign over his vehicles, and everything was all right when Charlie walked in and did that. So it's just them passing the blame to Charlie again, isn't it? I spoke to Nicholas about this. I was hoping to be able to record some kind of 5-minute interview thing, but we didn't have time to do that. But I did talk to him about it, yeah. And he was telling me it's sort of a bit of an exaggeration to say he was tortured by them for 3 days, sort of thing, because they were all friends and they often stayed at his house anyway. So it's kind of like they were just staying there and things escalated at the last minute, sort of thing. So it's like he probably wasn't tortured as much as people think he was, because they were actually friends. And I'll get to when I read from here, you'll hear about this. Yeah, and this is from page 164 of the Manson File. I'll be reading the bit called Cupid, If You Will, the Hinman Connection. Right, yeah, and I'm going to do this in 2 parts because it's so long. I timed it and it will take me a full 17 minutes to read the whole thing. So what I'll do is I'll read half of it and then I'll stop and I'll talk to the chat and then I'll start up again and read the other half of it. Right. Manson and Bobby Cupid Beausoleil had much more in common than the preference for improvisatory music, which led them to found the short-lived band The Milky Way. The obvious parallel is that by the time they met each other during an impromptu jam session at the Spiral Staircase House, they were both at the center of their own respective clans of adoring hippie chicks, with whom they roved across California. They both subscribed to the basic social libertarian 60s package of peace, love, sexual freedom, and enlightenment via LSD. And yet neither were comfortable with the gentle, whimsical flower child side of California's youthquake. Beausoleil said he yearned to be a barbarian. This born-to-be wild aggression attracted him to the macho gang mystique of the outlaw biker, an appeal that quickly led to fatal consequences. Charlie, the veteran beatnik, also scorned the innocence of the hippies, preferring to be called a slippy. Just as the two musicians shared an amorphous neo-pagan political philosophy, which can generally be designated as more right-wing than left-wing in many ways, Beausoleil and Manson were for a time younger and older versions of each other. As the author George Stimpson's research recently uncovered, it's psychologically interesting that Beausoleil's father was named Charles and his mother's maiden name was Mattox, very similar to Manson's maternal line of Maddox. And one can only wonder what his mentor, Kenneth Anger, made of the magical synchronicity of nomen est omen, emerging in Beausoleil's middle name, Kenneth. Less frequently noted is the fact that the same appeal which made Charlie and Bobby so desirable to the opposite sex also brought them plenty of unwanted fascination from gay and bisexual men. We've seen how this manifested in Manson's life in his Universal period, but this neglected homoerotic strain was also an impelling factor in bringing about the circumstances of their friendship, and other related psychosexual dynamics played a part in their varying levels of involvement with the murder, which simultaneously put an end to a mutual friend's life and their professional musical ambitions. In a recent parole hearing, Beausoleil mentioned that he was sexually abused by a male molester as a youth. Beausoleil's ill-fated friend Gary Hinman was openly bisexual. Beausoleil has admitted that Hinman's murder was partially spurred by a need to prove that he was a man to the bikers he was trying to impress. Beausoleil's charisma, like Manson's, had also brought him to the attention of filmmakers. We've seen how Manson's Christ-like aura and rap garnered his involvement in a big-budget Jesus film to be produced by the mainstream Universal Studios. At roughly the same time, Beausoleil was doing cinematic duty for the opposite camp, both religiously and aesthetically, starring in the title role of Kenneth Anger's low-budget underground production of Lucifer Rising in San Francisco. Anger, aggressively homosexual, had cast his eye of Horus on Beausoleil. It was the gay version of the casting couch, only with occult pretensions. In apparent lovelorn denial about his chances with Beausoleil, who was androgynous in appearance, but who claimed to be belligerently hetero in his erotic tastes, the moody late 30-ish director optimistically allowed the 21-year-old musician to crash at his home, the extravagantly decorated former Russian embassy, for several months. After a series of tiffs, Beausoleil freed himself from Anger's clawing clutches by liberating the director's car and escaping from Baghdad by the Bay to Hollywood Babylon. Ever since, the spurned Anger insisted that his treacherous Lucifer absconded with Lucifer Rising footage, which he claims still lays lost and buried in the desert. Here we have the first of many missing reels of film that keep turning up in the Manson saga. Beausoleil has just as persistently put it forth that Anger was simply too broke to afford to pick up the developed film from the lab, and placed the blame on his fallen star when the film's investors wanted to see some evidence of a finished product. Anger, who once seriously told me he never holds a grudge, claimed to have placed a curse on his AWOL Lucifer. When Beausoleil ended up convicted to life in prison, the movie Magi later judged his malediction a success. Despite these bad vibes, Anger and Beausoleil eventually made up to collaborate on the brilliant soundtrack for the final version of Lucifer Rising, which Beausoleil recorded in a makeshift recording studio built in prison. Curse or no, in his haste to flee from Anger's designs and find new lodgings in LA, Beausoleil had only moved from the proverbial pot to the fire. He was offered a place to stay in the hippie shantytown of Topanga Canyon by one Gary Hinman. From the first, according to some of the women who observed their cohabitation, relations between the two men were slightly strained, and for precisely the same reason that things had turned sour with Anger. Beausoleil's host was a versatile character in many other ways as well. A talented keyboard and bagpipe player, guitarist and music teacher, Hinman helped to teach the improvisatory musician Beausoleil how to read music. He was a sociology student, a fervent practitioner of the Japanese Buddhist sect Nichiren Shoshu, and an amateur chemistry student who turned science to profit as one of the Kenyon's best-connected amateur dope dealers. Hinman specialised in his top seller, the then still legal mescaline, which he manufactured in his own garage lab on the premises. My claim that Hinman supplied drugs to an exclusive clientele of his friends has predictably sparked outrage from the sect of the victims. But leaving aside the many statements of Manson and Beausoleil attesting to this, to his side occupation, a May 1968 police report unambiguously names Hinman as a supplier of marijuana capsules. Along with the unwanted sexual attention hovering in the background, there was another thing that Bobby didn't dig about his benefactor: his extreme leftist politics. At that time, Beausoleil entertained pro-white and authoritarian sentiments, which would later make him a natural in the Aryan Brotherhood prison gang. Manson recalled to me that Hinman's tiny cottage was strewn with militant Kill Whitey Black Panther pamphlets. The Panthers' anti-religious Marxist dogma didn't sit easily on the same shelf with Buddhist scriptures. Something about this volatile mixture, much like Hinman's hit-or-miss mescaline-making skills, didn't quite add up. Many years later, Manson made explicit just what that something was, recalling of Hinman: "He was an informant for the government. He was playing all kinds of treacherous games he shouldn't have been playing. See, when you're in the underworld, you got to be truthful. If you lie and you're faking and you're snitching, and it catches up to you, it bites you. You do it to yourself." Like so much of what Manson has truthfully had to say about the real background of the crimes, this and other similar statements have been roundly ignored. But in fact, Hinman's high-profile combination of narcotics trafficking, sexual unorthodoxy, and support of radical black activist groups did indeed bring him to the attention of, and the service of, the authorities. One of the sections Charlie objected to in the 2011 edition of this book was my statement that Hinman informed for the FBI. This was confirmed to me by a disgruntled former agent privy to the fact that not only Hinman, but Sebring, Polanski, and the LaBiancas were all being monitored by the FBI for unknown reasons, and that this surveillance was blown by the murders, thus necessitating a cover-up. That source also claimed Hinman cooperated with the feds. Charlie insisted, however, that he knew for a fact that Hinman was in league instead with the local Malibu Police Department, and that he discovered this in 1968 when he was arrested for marijuana possession. He said the Malibu cops were constantly hassling the commune, and that one officer in particular had a hard-on for me. In looking up paperwork on the arrest in question, which occurred in early May of 1968, I found this about that particular bust on Manson and some of his companions. Acting on information from above informant that house was being used as a crash pad by narcotics addicts and runaways, writer Sergeant Salerno, deputies Rodriguez and Reddy, with the assistance of Car 103, proceeded to above location. The location was the impromptu Manson pad at Summit Trail in Topanga Canyon. I knew the name of Salerno from my research into the much later Night Stalker killings, when I was collaborating on a never-completed book with Richard Ramirez. Salerno, I recalled, was one of the homicide detectives assigned to that case, and he was also a key detective in the Hillside Strangler investigation in the 70s. Looking into Charlie's suspicion in more depth, I found this passage I only vaguely recalled from the late Philip Kahlo's book, The Night Stalker. In September of 1967, Frank Salerno made sergeant, and his dream of becoming a full-fledged detective finally came true. He was put in charge of a narcotics team consisting of 8 men. Their job was to do reconnaissance work, find out who was selling what where, and do undercover surveillance. That year, a new narcotics team was started up to deal with drug problems in Malibu and Topanga Canyon, and Frank was asked if he'd like to run it. He and his men began to stake out Malibu and the canyon, developing informants. Most of the busts they made were small-time dealers, one of whom was Charlie Manson. Sure, right, I'm going to take a break there. See what the chat's saying. Right. I'll have to look that up. That sounds interesting. I think I've heard that name, actually, somewhere. I'll look that up. According to Dinwiddie, Gary was organising a neighbourhood campaign to warn them of the family. Yes, I've heard of this, and their predatory ways. Charlie threatened to burn Hinman's house down. They were feuding. Yeah, I've heard that he did. People were getting freaked out by them raiding people's garbage and stuff like that. Yeah, and people didn't like them. Charlie was trying to strong-arm Hinman into working for him in his criminal syndicate, is what it looks like. Like before they tried to extort him, yeah. And they do seem to have been under the impression he had more money than he actually did as well. I have had that before they did this as well. I've heard it, but yeah, it's a lot of stuff. Yeah, I looked at that. You can't. You have to be a member to view the threads, and joining is disabled at the moment. So I don't know if they're not accepting new people or you have to be invited. But yeah, let me know. Because you posted it in my group, didn't you? But I can't view it, and you can't join either. Yeah, well, apparently he did study chemistry as well. He actually had the degree in chemistry, according to that thing. In what does it say? Sorry, just let me check again. Yeah, he graduated school with a degree in chemistry. It says so. He had actually got a degree in chemistry. Hmm. It's kind he joined. He became a Buddhist and was trying to get cleaner drugs. So maybe he was trying to move out of it, but it was too late, obviously. Hi, Dylan. Oh, yeah, don't worry about it. You can come back and watch it on playback, can't you? I've already read out part of this and spoken about a few things. Just weird stuff from the homicide reports I've noticed. But I'm going to read the second part of what I was going to read from the Manson File. I just want to have a rest in between because it's a long passage to read out. Hmm. Yeah, not a single fucking person in Topanga Canyon with a degree in chemistry wasn't making psychedelics. And clandestine chemistry everywhere. And I was just looking at this. There's that a link. I'll post it in the description. But the place called Drug Forum, they've got a whole board on mescaline, and it's all people. Well, it's about peyote, and just the drug in general. But there's loads of people talking about making it to this day. People still do it. And there were loads of people making their own LSD as well, weren't there? Yeah, check out. I haven't showed you my lamp, have I? Yeah, as well. So this is the moon. It's a 3D print of the moon. I can make it do. Right, I can make it change color as well. Oh, and the batteries are running out in this. But this is a glass skull. I've got to get new batteries for him. It's supposed to light up. But yeah, the lights are fading because the batteries are. I've had it for years. Another Halloween thing. There's no speculation. They didn't go there to rob a person they knew with no masks on and only take a few piece of shit cars. Yeah, and they stayed there for days. They knew each other very well. So and Bobby had lived there before. Other family members had stayed there. They all knew each other very well. Mm. There's something in the police reports on CLA Drive about the Volkswagen bus and who bought that. It does. I was thinking everyone says that. Yeah, you can make a great bong out of it. Just got to get one of those, the chemistry flask bung things that you stick a tube down. Mm. This guy looks like a bung. Yeah, you could make a wicked bong with it. It's quite good. Only a quid it was. £1. This bit does come out, and I can replace the batteries in it. I checked when I bought it. It's just a string of lights on this thing. Should be able to keep it working. Hmm. Oh, sorry. What was I gonna? That was it. DiCarlo was an arms dealer. Yeah, well, there's loads of guns dealing going on at Spahn Ranch, weren't there? Definitely, someone was an arms dealer there. The Devil's Lettuce. That's a nickname for Jimson weed. Weirdly enough, if you watch my Tex Watson stream about his Belladonna trip, they call Jimson weed the Devil's Lettuce. Yeah, that is in the Manson File as well. It's not in the bit that I've been reading out, but that is something that Nicholas says in the Manson File, that Dennis Wilson and, well, it is actually mentioned in the bit I'm gonna read out. Yes, Charlie and Dennis Wilson actually met through Gary Hinman. There's loads of crazy stuff. Did you hear what I just read out? Because Charles Manson said that he knew that Gary Hinman was an informant to the police. And there is some evidence that he was, apparently, yeah. So he was an informant. Yeah, and Tex knew Dennis Wilson independently of Charlie as well. Because Tex met Dennis Wilson before Charlie, apparently. Yeah, oh, you've got to get it if you can. People who've ordered it, because people who've been pre-ordered this for years. I went and picked mine up from an event. I picked it up in person, but people haven't received it yet. A lot of people, but people are receiving it. But people who've ordered the new UK edition have received it before people have received the old edition. It's a nightmare. But yeah, it's definitely worth buying, worth ordering. I haven't read that. But, oh yes, well, and another thing related to the Hinman case, in my Leslie Van Houten video, she claimed that she was at Gary Hinman's house and took part in the murder of Gary Hinman at her first trial, which was crazy because it didn't help anyone at all. In fact, it just made stuff worse for her because she implicated herself. Yeah. Yeah, well, there was at the time the CIA was all over leftist politics as well, wasn't it? Trying to break up things, and and yeah, the pool boy network. No, it was Tex. It's looking like Tex might have been as well. Yeah, oh, you could make a whole thing about John Phillips, and I've just found China Phillips's channel as well, the daughter of him and Michelle Phillips, because Mackenzie Phillips is by a different mother. She's not Michelle Phillips' child. She's from a previous marriage of John Phillips. Yeah, Leslie denies he was there as well at the. I think. No, I think she does. Okay, oh, I'll have to look back. I'm going to start taking live stream clips and uploading them as videos as well, because that they get more views. Short clips where I've read out bits that are important. Yeah, that was it. They could have robbed him anyway, couldn't they? And they didn't have to kill him. He was non-violent. He would have just put his hands up and let them take anything, wouldn't he? Anyway, they didn't have to kill him. That's the saddest thing about all of this. Yeah, that's right. And they had to play this down as well because they didn't want to connect it all to drugs and bikers. They just wanted it to make out, Charles Manson had this cult of crazy women. Yeah, she got immunity, didn't she? Because she testified, basically. Yeah. Yeah, I've got to listen to what she said as well, though, because that will be interesting. But she didn't know much about the actual murders, I don't think, did she? But she knew some stuff. Oh right. Oh, you can hear them coaching her. The coach her not to tell them more than she has to, and coach her on what to say when on the stand. Yeah, yeah. You can see she's really heavily coached when she's on the stand. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll get back to reading the Manson. What I was going to read from the Manson file now, because yeah, that's what it all gets into. So we were just getting into, right? So I just read out, didn't I, that there was this police detective that's admitted in past interviews that he was doing an undercover drug operation at this time, and that one of the people he busted through these undercover drug operations and informants was Charles Manson. Frank Salerno, the guy was called, and he investigated the Night Stalker and the Boston Strangler as well. Right, so as Salerno revealed in a documentary interview decades later, Charlie was bailed out from the Malibu police station by a local Topanga resident, Gary Hinman. What is especially interesting about this to me, in terms of law enforcement informants sniffing around for drugs, is that when I tried to get an idea of what Charlie's friendship with Hinman was like before it all turned fatal, he cryptically said, "One day the guy was your brother coming to bail you out, but then you find out, oh, he was bailing you out about something he told the cops about in the first place." I still don't know if this was Charlie bitterly bad-mouthing Hinman to make the murder more palatable, as he sometimes did when speaking of the victims, or something he really knew to be fact. But he was adamant that somehow, that day, he learned without a doubt that Hinman was an informant, even though he paradoxically maintained more or less friendly relations with him after this revelation until their final violent confrontation. Frank Salerno admitted to cultivating informants in Topanga under the control of the Malibu anti-drug task force he operated, just as he stated in that same interview that he was frustrated by his inability to get Manson into custody, even though he was aware of his conspicuous drug dealing. He remarked that when Manson was told that Gary Hinman had come to bail him out, that Charlie acted squirrely. I think it's reasonable then to wonder if Hinman wasn't one of the informants Salerno's narc squad assigned to report on the Manson commune's drug dealing activities. In a markedly clear-headed and informative interview from June 1985, Charlie offered yet another variation on this theme, saying of Hinman to High Society magazine reporter Linda Franischelli, "He was working undercover for the government, trying to gather information on the hippie movement. He was doubling as a musician and had a direct line to the CIA. He was feeding them bullshit information while he was dealing his dope." Whatever else he may have been, Hinman's spiritual streak and interest in metaphysics made him receptive to Manson's mystical outlook. They were often overheard to discuss such matters with mutual respect. Hinman never counted among the inner circle of the group around Manson, but he was every bit as much a sympathetic friend of the family. As Phil Kaufman and Beausoleil, like them, Hinman maintained his independence from the Manson circle, despite close ties and a basic similarity in philosophy. Other than the bailing out of Manson, Hinman's often lent a helping hand when Manson and his circle were besieged by the various legal and cash flow problems that their precarious position often brought about. Besides their mutual drug dealing connections and their mystical sides, Manson and Hinman had another thing in common: their familiarity with Los Angeles' gay and bisexual celebrity underground, which so often intersected with the drug scene. When Beausoleil finally moved out in late 1967, the former housemates parted ways on fairly good terms, suggesting nothing of the bad blood that would flow later. Beausoleil and the other Manson associates would remain loyal customers until the day Cupid stabbed Hinman to death 2 years later during a dispute about a bad batch of mescaline he bought. In January of 1968, Beausoleil took possession of his own Topanga Canyon hippie hovel in a charmingly rustic horseshoe lane. He didn't have this basement dwelling to himself for long. Soon enough, his new friend Charlie, replete with female entourage, had parked the black bus on his lawn and set up camp. Despite the cramped conditions, there were some perks to the close living quarters. As Beausoleil later recalled of those happier times from his prison cell, 2 guys and 11 chicks can get kind of cozy. It was shortly after that time of this brief initial cohabitation that Charlie and Bobby pulled their resources into the Milky Way. That venture soon collapsed despite receiving positive feedback from Neil Young. But hope sprang infernal. Hollywood, even if only in its lowest level, called on the embryonic Manson circle's talent again. Beausoleil left Manson and the girls to watch the fort while he was off to appear as the Indian brave Lone Eagle in the softcore porno western Ramrodder, foreshadowing Manson's own later living accommodation on the permanent cowboy film set at the Spahn Ranch. Beausoleil lived in a self-constructive teepee during the no-budget film's outdoor location shooting. This sleazy cinematic excursion brought another member of the Ramrodder cast into the fold. Catherine Scher, soon to be dubbed Gypsy due to her Hungarian ancestry, was cast as a scantily clad Indian maiden in the film. During the shoot, she shared the newlywed Beausoleil in his teepee with his wife Gail, a dog, a hawk, and several other squaws. As with later supposed Manson followers, Catherine Kitty Lutzinger and Leslie Lulu Van Houten, Cher was actually always one of Beausoleil's harem. This, in fact, like so many others, has been blurred to create the more easily digestible fiction of one big happy Manson family. After the ignominious fall of the Milky Way and Ramrodder's rapid entry into Z-movie oblivion, it seemed that Manson and Beausoleil's on-again, off-again incursion into Hollywood, fast track, was stalled. It was thanks to their mutual friend and connection, Gary Hinman, that they hooked up with what appeared to be a genuine godsend for their mutual musical ambitions. And it came in the form of another celebrity closet case attracted to Manson's uninhibited sexuality and magnetism. This particular admirer would soon open the Pandora's box out of which tumbled the 4 fatal factors which assured the Manson Circle's destiny. Terry Melcher, Rudy Alterbelly, Sharon Tate, and Tex Watson. His brother Brian nicknamed him Dumb Angel, but Dennis Wilson was really an unknowing angel of death, for it was he who inadvertently brought into being the conditions without which the murders that blighted his generation would never have occurred. He set the stage for the slayings, whose cover-up gave birth to the legend of lies which overwhelmed and outlived him. And he was aware that for the rest of his numbered days. In 1976, when asked about Manson, he told Rolling Stone writer David Felton, "As long as I live, I'll never talk about that. Some things I'll never talk about," he told music reporter William McKean, who'd asked the drummer about the time he was roommates with Charlie. But to yet another journalist, Wilson said what he'd promised or threatened to scores of his friends privately. "I know why Manson did what he did. Someday I'll tell the world. I'll write a book and explain why he did it." That tome remained unwritten. Dennis Wilson drowned shortly after Christmas Day 1983 under a friend's yacht in Marina del Rey after checking himself out of a failed detox program. Some toxins don't come out so easily. Most, but not all, of Dennis Wilson's secrets sank with him to the bottom of the Pacific. His American flag-draped casket was deposited into the deep during a rare civilian naval burial at sea. Special permission for this ceremony had been authorized by the veteran Hollywood hand and Beach Boys fan occupying the White House at the time, Commander-in-Chief Ronald Reagan, the actor who had presided over California in the strange summer of '69. One of the more perceptive poetic epitaphs for this disastrous life of the Beach Boys' tragic homme fatale comes from his friend Daryl Dragon. "It was like watching a volcano. You say, 'That's pretty,' and then someone else says, 'But it killed 500 people,' and you say, 'But it's still pretty.'" Right. So basically, one of the interesting bits there for me is definitely that actually it was the Gypsy came with Bobby as well. So like they weren't all taken in just by Charlie. They came, Leslie and Gypsy both came with Bobby, and so did Kitty Lutzinger. So like, you know, these women didn't all just get recruited by Charlie. Some of them actually came with Bobby. And also all the stuff about Gary being an informant. And it does mention that, obviously, yeah, Dennis Wilson actually introduced everyone. Basically, they all met through Dennis Wilson. Sorry, just reading through the chat. I wonder about that as well, because yeah, there was a lot of pornography being made, and Charles Manson was supposed to have been involved in producing pornography and stuff like that, wasn't he? That's another crazy thing about this case. Yeah, I can also, what I can do is I can end this stream because we've been going for nearly an hour now, and then I can start up another stream just like as an after show. But yeah, no, that's mind-blowing stuff, obviously, and listen to it on playback again because there's loads to process there. Like I say, I'm going to start trying to edit clips out, you know, where I read things out or whatever, and do videos, just so it's easier to find the information. Sorry, just got to look through the chat so I can see your comment. Yeah, and or something. Because also, there's also the other thing that they reveal in the Manson File that's not in any of the police reports is that Sharon Tate had a stereo that was stolen as well, and Stephen Parent was into audio equipment, wasn't he? and he was actually on probation for burgling schools. Yeah, that's mentioned in what I read out. Yeah, and there's that other thing, the other quotation from the famous detective that investigated loads of famous cases that said he was using undercover people and he busted Charlie Manson through an informant, and so was Gary Hinman the informant. Yeah, apparently they'll never speak. The last stream I did was all about a pool boy, wasn't it? That run off with a house boy. Sorry, just looking at the chat. See what. Oh yes, someone's commented down below because I saw that. Yeah, people were saying that it might be. Someone had commented on the video actually that he might be an occult consultant. Yeah, coming in to see if there was anything satanic looking about it or whatever. Whilst the crime scene was still like whole before they moved the bodies, so they could see, so he could tell by the positions of the bodies or whatever. Yeah, he was a police consultant on the occult. Right. So that was Paul Watkins said he was thrown out. That's interesting. Most people don't find out the morgue now, the crime scene. Yeah, because Dylan said you wondered if it was parents' priest. No, yeah, we watched all that on the after show last time, didn't we? That's another thing I can do more in Facebook live streams because you don't have to worry so much about getting copyright struck and that in smaller streams, you know. Straight Sense were already owned Gary Hinman because they extorted local small time dealers. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, that's probably right. He was just there to look at that. 1% of gangs were the mafia of the psychedelics market. Yeah, everyone barely knew each other, but yeah, the more you dig, the more you realise they all knew each other really well. And most of them had slept with each other. Yeah, Terry Melcher couldn't remember if he was at a dinner party at his own house, yeah. He saw the cocksucker on a regular basis, but couldn't remember if it was at his house. But they were on so many drugs as well. You look at the bloody list of drugs the guys were taking. They probably couldn't remember. The photo I've seen with the stereo at Cielo was Melcher's. There is a stereo in the guest house crime scene pics. Yeah, well, you see, because we only see photos, there's not many photos of the inside of the house, is there? I've never noticed, yeah, because there are some pictures of Sharon, isn't there? It would have been a large, because 60 stereos were large, and it was a high-end, expensive stereo, so it would have been one of those things that stood in a cabinet, I assume. So, yeah, it should have been there. But it's not mentioned in any of the police reports. But that is apparently something that Nicholas has found out. Pool boy money ends up in Swiss banks. And so does CIA money. Yeah, well, they have loads of front companies, don't they, that they run it all through. Yeah, that's another rumor about Stephen Parent, isn't it? Yeah. I wondered about that as well, because there is something they can say even if the person's dead, because the last rites, they have to be still breathing to hear it, but there is something they can say once the person's dead as well. But I think it's more likely it was to see if there was any occult stuff happening. I think it's more likely he was an occult consultant, because a lot of Catholics are specialists in all that sort of shit, you know, because the Vatican holds a lot of information. Yeah, well, that's the thing, innit? They reckon the mob and the CIA as well are very closely connected. Yeah, right. What I'm going to do is, because I've run for an hour, I'm going to end this stream and I'll just go live straight away again. I'll go live to the Facebook group and to the YouTube channel. So just refresh. Oh, and yeah, like and subscribe if you haven't already, because that helps. And just watching the videos helps increase the watch time if you have time. It really helps. And there's my buy me a coffee link as well now, where you can make a donation basically to me, because I do pay for StreamYard now. And thank you to the 2 people that have already. So I've had some donations. So that's really kind of you. And I can also, through that, I can set up a monthly support thing as well. But I'm not going to do that yet, because I haven't even got a big enough audience yet, really, I don't think, to ask for that. But maybe in the future I'll do that. And I can set up a wish list. I can post pictures of things I need. Like if I wanted a camera or something like that, you know what I mean? I could post a wish list thing for that. And you could you just send the money directly to me, though. And I don't just promise that I spend it on that. So I'll have to see how that works out. But yeah, that's in fact, I can show it on the screen. Sorry, the input throw is really awkward. I've got to click through. Well, buy me a coffee page there, basically. I've had 3 supporters. Someone else has supported me since last looked at it. Thank you, yes. I'll always share it in the description. In fact, I should post the link in the chat now. Tab of mine. It's confusing. Yeah. The FBI 1969 were doing exactly what criminals wanted them to do. Crack down on radicals, not organised crime or criminals too much. Yeah, well, there was obviously blackmailing a lot of people, weren't they? A similar thing was going on in the UK as well. The Cray twins. That's another interesting true crime case to talk about. But yeah, they were blackmailing a lot of people in the House of Lords and stuff like that, which are, obviously part of our government, and they got away with it. Right, yeah. So what I'll do is I'll end this now, and like I say, I'll go live again directly after, and just do like an after stream. So yeah, just wait about a minute and refresh my page, and you should see another stream. So come and join me there, and we'll chat more. Excellent. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in a second.